Think tank Agora Policy has released a report on how to revamp Nigeria's economy. The report looked at Nigeria's most pressing economic issues and suggested solutions to them. Do we have the solutions? Okay, so there's the cover of the report. Yeah, all right, there are the solutions. All right, so we've got end petrol subsidies, end oil theft, amend and enforce Fiscal Responsibility Act, boost the tax revenue with compliance and widening the tax net, sale and concession of government assets, active policy to promote SMEs. We just saw the head of the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria saying to buy Nigeria goods, and then end ways and means financing. The CBN should redefine its exchange rate objective. Public policy analyst Ugo Aliogo is literally, outside of the people that wrote their report, the best person to discuss this. Ugo, you're very welcome. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much.
So welcome to the show.
Yes.
So yes, many people say Nigeria's problems are straightforward.
Yes.
So does that mean a report like that from Agora Policy is easy to write, since we all know what the issues are?
So let me start with your question, to interpret your question. So when you say that people say Nigerian problems are straightforward, so what it implies is that we know our problems. We know the challenges confronting us as a nation. And then we have been in constant touch with the realities, right? And what this policy is saying is not different from what we are facing as a country, right? We need to not just have a policy like this, but to implement the suggestions. They talked about government expenditures and then government revenue. And then from what the policy talked about was that from 2011 to 2021, government expenditure was higher than government revenue. Right? And then there's a growing gap. So what's in between that gap? What's in between the gap is debt. That there's rising government debt, you know. And then they also talked about our GDP, that we'll have the largest GDP in Africa, we'll have great economic indices. But the reality is that our economy is sick. There is need for total revamping of the economy. Election is next year, and the campaigns have started in earnest. You know, so all the things that the policy have suggested, they are in line. But my fear has been always that, would the government implement these policies? Like, one of the things they talked about was the issue of oil theft. They talked about the issue of subsidy.
Yes. In fact, I think the editorial board of this day newspaper, they have a piece today where they, an op-ed where they talk about it's time to unmask the oil theft, people behind it. So is that easier said than done? Let's start with oil theft.
Now, oil theft has been a problem that has been with the economy a long time, more than a decade. We have been suffering this problem. You know, but because there are people profiteering from this, as it were, there has not been continuous efforts or a renewed commitment to tackle it. It all ends in conversations. It all ends in setting up committees. It all ends in government having a roundtable discussion. The Russia-Ukraine war, right, has brought about a windfall in oil prices. There's energy crisis. And then countries whose production quota is very high, they're making a lot of revenue. They're making a lot of profits. This is a time we should make profit, but we're not making profits because our production quota has dropped, right, due to oil theft. So I think much of the conversation has to do with we implementing the demands of this. And then regarding the oil theft, President Muhammad Buhari, when he presented the budget for 2023, he talked about the need to, that in 2023, government would discontinue first subsidy.
There we go. That's our next point.
So, well, there have been conversation about discontinuing first subsidy, eliminating first subsidy. But are they being implemented? Where's the political will? Where's the sincerity on the part of government?
Okay.
Right?
So, what do you support yanking it immediately or removing it in phases?
So it's two ways, right? If you want to execute a battle, right? If you want to start a campaign, you count your costs, you count your losses, you count your profits. So if we decide to remove first subsidy, we'll have to critically look at what are pros and cons, right? If we do it in phases, what are the impacts to the ordinary Nigerian? Because that's where the whole thing ends. What is the impact in the ordinary Nigerian if you want to phase it out once? And then if you want to take phases, what are the impacts? So I think government should count its costs. I think government should look at the impact it's going to have on the ordinary Nigerian. If the impact is huge, right, what are the ways we need to do to ensure that we ameliorate the impact so that the ordinary Nigerians will not feel it? So those are the things we should look at regarding the first subsidy issues.
Well, it also calls for widening the tax net and in order to boost tax revenue. I'm guessing they're referring to the informal sector. How do you formalize the informal? The vulcanizer on the side of the street who is not paying taxes, or the person selling akara or chin-chin, how do you get those people into the tax net?
So when you talk about tax, right, there's something called tax justice.
Okay.
Right. So that conversation has to be in tandem. So if the vulcanizer in my street is paying tax, what is government providing for him?
Right.
To justify the tax he's paying.
Right.
So if you tell the woman's frying akara in my street, or selling...
it looks like we need to come to your street. Because you've got a lot of vulcanizers and chin-chin sellers and akara sellers on your street.
So I'm looking at from the perspective of the informal sector.
So
if you tell the woman frying akara to start paying tax, and then you tax them, what are they getting in return?
Right.
So that's where the tax justice comes into play. And there was a time I was on the issue, I talked about one market in Abia State, Ariari market in Abia State. It's very big market, And then, do you know that there are tax collectors that even tax the woman or the lady selling sachet water, 200 naira. And then what is the revenue flow for that lady who is selling sachet water?
Right.
At the end of the day. And then you are taxing her. What are you providing in return?
Right.
So there should be tax justice alongside.
Okay.
So it should not be buried on... I'm not against collecting taxes. It's very good. But what is government providing in return?
Right. Great question. Sale of assets. Are they possibly talking about the refineries? When they talk about how do you determine which government assets to sell in order to boost revenue? Sale and concession of government assets.
I think much of those assets should focus on infrastructural assets, right? So you have the refineries, and then you also have the power plants. There are a lot of government infrastructures. So much of the conversation will focus on privatize some of these government assets, right, to boost revenue generation. So I think that should be in those the focus in that area.
Ending ways and means financing. If you end that, where's government going to get? Where will government borrow from? If you end ways and means.
Right now, we're in a tight situation.
We're
in a tight situation, and then this conversation should be basically around the economic team.
Well, there's lots of economic teams. There's the Presidential Advisory Council. Doyin Salami is now the head of another council. Then I think the President Buhari is now chairing another council. It's like 3 or 4. So when you say teams, it's like the Avengers or the Justice League. There's just a whole lot of members and teams everywhere. What do you suggest?
So the theme they could come up with a palliative measure. To get us out of this situation, because we're in a deep problem, So what we need is a temporary solution to get out of this problem. Right.
I think it also calls for the central bank redefining its exchange rate policy. How would be nice if they had gotten into exactly how that happens. What do you think? You think because I think where's the naira now? 740.
740.
So 740. What do you make of that final point as we close out on this agro policy solution? By the way, this is not I'm glad we pointed this out for our viewers. This is not an exhaustive list. I mean, they went through a litany of solutions.
They went through a litany of solutions.
Right.
So, like I said, part of the conversation has to do with, will the government implement some of these solutions that have been suggested? We've had a lot of economic policy. We have a lot of economic group plan on how to represent this economy. But something happens that at the end of the day, these solutions are not being implemented. They are not being followed to the latter. If they are being implemented, it's not being followed to the latter. We'll have the trader money. We'll have a lot of economic plans to reposition this economy. I mean, if we had followed the litany of suggestions that have been outlined,
we'd probably be a top 10 economy right now.
Yes, we'd probably
maybe
be a top 10 economy right now.
So
this is very beautiful in earnest, But are we going to follow it through to the latter? So that's the issue.
What's your as far as revamping the economy is concerned, are you optimistic for whoever becomes the next president in just a matter of months and whether or not they will be able to implement whatever plan, maybe continue these plans that are here or chart a new path for the economy.
So it's two things,
Yeah.
right? The new government comes in, and then they want to show that, yes, we are the Messiah, we are the Messiah, we are the winners.
Yeah.
So they try to chart their own economic growth plan.
Yeah.
So for my own advice is, we're in a deep problem. The aspirants have seen the problem we are in, right?
Yeah.
And then I think they should chart a better way for us to get out of the problem. And not just launching an initiative that might not have an impact or that might not have a far-reaching effect to the society.
Yeah.
Right? So it has to be something that would help us come out of the deep problem we are, So that's what I suggest.
Okay, you made a suggestion, which is good. We like it because you're a public policy analyst and you bring support. My question was, are you optimistic? You didn't answer that part. Are you optimistic about the new year and where the economy goes with new leadership?
Yes, I'm optimistic because the new leadership may want to bring in a new wave of growth, a new wave of development to try to address some of the problems, so bring up a solution. So I'm very optimistic. I'm hopeful that something better will come in the new government.
I'm going to bring you into the studio 6 months, 6 months from when the new administration comes in, and I ask you the same question after we see where things are. Ugo Aliogo, public policy analyst. Ugo, always a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you.